Welcome to Sex, Money, and Real Estate Podcast, the show for real estate couples about how to close more deals in the bedroom. My name is Nancy Jameson.
And I'm Bill Jameson.
And each week we deep dive into juicy, intentional, sexy conversations, sharing with you what it takes to create balance in your intimate relationships and your real estate business. Thank you so much for being here. Shall we begin?
Hey, babe.
Hey, baby. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome. I'm a little tired.
Yes.
I'm a little tired. I was up late last night.
Why? What were you doing?
Well, it had nothing to do with sex or intimacy Well, it did have something to do with intimacy last night. But it was with a small group of people that I spend time with. We call it COI, Circle of Influence. And a lot of times, it's a weekly accountability meeting of like-minded people, and a lot of times we will wrap up a little bit earlier than we did, and we got done with some extra people in there, and we got done a little bit later than, I guess, quote unquote normal for me, and so running on a few hours of sleep, but feeling great nonetheless. How are you? How are you today?
I am awesome. Thank you very much for asking. I appreciate it.
Well, after not seeing you last night, it's nice to look in your eyes and see you bright and shiny.
Thank you.
You look like you're doing well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So as we begin this podcast today, as we like to do, let's share some magic.
Cool. How do you define magic?
I define magic is how I create empowering moments day to day. It's how I create those empowering moments day to day by I am at a loss for words right now.
Your magic is so powerful.
It is. How do I
cut that, Matthew? Where are we in the thing so we can delete that part?
202. So right around Matthew, right around 195, 155.
So how do you define magic, babe?
I define magic by how I influence self, others, and life in an empowering way.
Awesome. So do you have some magic to share, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I can go first. I will talk about the intimate connections that I had into COI last night. Not only is it an accountability group, but it is, I guess it's an accountability all the way around. We actually go through what's called an epic challenge. And where somebody brings, brings something up where they may be a little stuck in life, with friends or family, or could be stuck anywhere, really. Sex, religion, money,
work environment, finances. Yeah.
So we went through that with one of our COI members last night, and it was a beautiful, intimate connection with her. There were some breakdowns around being in denial before evolving and swirling up through the breakthrough, and it was a really beautiful process, and I always appreciate being in it. So yeah, how about you? Magic?
Awesome. So my magic is around this beautiful habit that you and I started about 1.5 years ago. Excuse me. And on one day during the week, you and I take a yoga class together.
Yes.
So we're in this intimate setting with a fantastic yoga and teacher. Whoop, whoop, props to Cheryl. And we go and we do yoga. So we'll do a little bit of warm up, a little cardio beforehand, and then we'll position our mats together next to each other, and the lighting is dim, and she's got this amazing music on. And then you and I are in this space where we're laying down doing our yoga positions next to each other. And make no mistake, it's definitely a serious workout. She brings something new every single week that pushes us and stretches us literally. And so today my hamstrings are giving me a little feedback about yesterday's yoga class. And what I love about it is that you and I, just every once in a while, you and I will look over at each other and wink at each other or smile, or root each other on for going deeper into that pose. And it's a beautiful way of being intimate with ourselves. And it's a beautiful way for me to be intimate in that intimate setting with you. And I will definitely say that what happens is the sexual energy is definitely flowing through me. I mean, I feel it. You know, the yogis call it Kundalini energy. So I feel it. And I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. So.
Yes, I also feel the intimacy and the sexual energy combined as we are in that moment, and as we get towards the end of it and we get towards the cool down and we're doing the more gentle stretches and slowing down our heart rates and maybe doing a couple inversions in between all that, there's the stretches on the floor where one hand will reach over to the other while we're, and we get to eye gaze and hold hands and stretch. And so, it's like we're loving on ourselves and we're loving on each other at the same time. So completely beautiful. And I love that magic.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm complete.
Awesome. So then what are we talking about today? Can anybody guess?
Yeah.
Anybody know?
So today we're talking about this juicy subject, intimacy and sex. Sex versus intimacy, or intimacy versus sex. Well,
or intimacy and sex.
Yeah, that's what we like to say. And for sure.
For sure.
There is no either or, it's an and.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we're discussing the distinctions of them, and then, how they're utilized together, how we utilize them together. And yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of those subjects that has for sure evolved over the years, especially as the maturity of our relationship has evolved. I mean, remember, you and I got together when I was 24. So
I was 27.
You were almost, I guess you were probably 26.
26, 24. Yeah, 26, 27.
1995.
Yeah. So we, I mean, and speaking for myself, I had low maturity around both sex and intimacy. I mean, wherever I was, 26, 27 years old, I'm going to tell you that I probably hadn't evolved it much since I was 16.
Awesome. And so you want to define it first before we go into all that?
Sure. And coincidentally, I have a definition of sex right here. Sex, sexual activity, including specifically sexual intercourse, societal or current paradigm of the purpose of sex is for pleasure or quote unquote love or duty, like in marriage, stress reduction, procreation, and sometimes used as a drug or an addiction for
because of the sexual addiction.
Yeah, and control. Yep. What about intimacy for you?
Hang on one second. I'm having a technical difficulty. What time is this?
8 minutes.
So intimacy, as described by Psychology Today, is the closeness that requires a high level of transparency and openness. And that definitely resonated with me because I feel like that's how you and I relate to intimacy in that description. And, the other thing is that it involves a degree of vulnerability. Again, this is from Psychology Today. It says, this involves a degree of vulnerability that can feel uncomfortable or anxiety producing to many of us. And so what that means to me is that when you're in a position of truly being vulnerable and in that vulnerable space, then you're open, right? I mean, so you're totally open, and whatever it is that you're choosing to share with that person in that moment, or your partner or whomever it is, there can be a certain amount of like, oh my gosh, how are they going to feel about me when I share this with them? Or what are they going to say? Or is our relationship going to change as a result of me sharing this? And so a lot of times what happens is that you don't share 100%. And so what Bill and I call that is a withhold. And it's been really interesting, our journey of evolving our conversation around sex and intimacy. So I really appreciate it. I definitely resonated with those, the way that they described that level of intimacy. And I appreciate how you and I have chosen to evolve those conversations, because quite frankly, the current paradigm has collapsed the two together. Like
that one is the other, or
yeah.
the other is the same kind of thing.
Yes. And if you're not having sex, then you're not intimate, or you're not intimate or in an intimate relationship unless you're having sex.
Right.
And I mean, that's not how we do it. I mean, we just don't agree with that. So it's definitely not the deal. So you were talking about before, like early on in the relationship with when you were around like 26 and everything like that. So early on, what would you say shaped your feelings and thoughts around sex and intimacy?
Well, a lot of my sexual and intimate education was, admittedly self-learned. It's not like I was in a place there where, mom or dad or I was, had any relationships really in family or beyond that helped to shape what that would look like for me. So it was all pretty much trial and error. And, when you're 15, 16, 17, well, when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, I'm a big bundle of hormones, and sex felt like intimacy to me. And I didn't know the difference, and, never obviously thought to look it up. So that was, so one was the other. And so, going forward 10 years or so, and meeting you, there was no evolution with that. So I really, when we got together, I feel like a lot of my understanding and of our relationship was that it was sex. Sex was the intimacy, and they were combined, and there was no separation from one or the other. So I appreciate, the transparency that we have created over the years, so that, and putting in the time to be transparent so that we could practice that intimacy outside of sex. We have spent a lot of time being transparent and open and honest with each other, knowing that, they are separate. And I think it's doing the practice, and not just with each other, but within our small groups and our friends and our family, and practicing the transparency, practicing being uncomfortable, being comfortable, and being uncomfortable, that has led to the evolution to where we are today.
Yeah, because it definitely wasn't always like that. I mean, there was definitely. I mean, we've been through some ghetto breakdowns around sex. And it's interesting because if we look at the current societal paradigm of sex with the control aspect of it, like there was definitely an element of control in the relationship. Like when I wanted to have sex and you didn't want to have sex, we weren't having sex.
Right.
And so
all control.
Yeah. And so there were definitely many months where it was, we'll have sex out of obligation again, because we're married and we're in this relationship. But it was like once a month, and it was 5 minutes, and it was, sorry, I'm not sorry. And it was tricky, and it caused a lot of angst and a lot of breakdowns. And I feel like, that's what that's what I was actually looking for. And I didn't realize that that's what I was looking for, was the intimacy aspect of it. Like, to feel that closeness with you, and to have and share that vulnerability and that space with you, because you were my partner. And so I too collapsed the two. Like growing up, I mean, I can't even tell you how many romance novels I read. I mean, that's what I was, I was either reading Stephen King or I was reading romance novels. Or Judy
There's a couple.
Blume. You remember?
Judy Blume. That's hysterical.
And so, so all of that stuff. And I was completely filling my head. So now I'm like 10, 11, 12, because I was a voracious reader. So I would read one of those romance novels in like a day. and after school in the afternoon.
Nice.
While my mom and my dad were still at work. So it was because I wasn't supposed to be reading those. I forget, where did I get those from? I think I got those from my babysitter
That is
who
funny.
smoked Newports, but that's a whole nother podcast.
That's funny.
So so I would read these, they're soft porn romance novels, right? And so here I'm getting all of my information shaped from the novels. MTV just came out. Right. So here's all these crazy videos and, ZZ Top legs and all the fashion and the boobs and the bodies and like all that kind of stuff. And then, my parents were going through this breakdown and ultimately divorced. So they each started dating other people. So there was all of that conversation, like what the fuck is going on? And then I would spend time in South Carolina with down in Charleston with my grandparents, and my grandfather had a Playboy subscription. So here's all these Playboys in the upstairs bathroom. Grandpa would go upstairs to use the bathroom because that's where the Playboy subscriptions were. Right. They weren't downstairs in like the common or the main level.
Right.
So I find
and come out of the bathroom much more relaxed.
Yes, exactly. Well, he would walk down the stairs a whole lot easier. That's for sure.
That's hysterical.
So, so here's so I'd stay with them all summer and then here are these Playboy subscriptions. Anyway, so there was all kinds of influences, R-rated movies and all kinds of stuff that I was watching that I wasn't supposed to be watching. Yeah. And so, yes, my idea of sex was that the more open and willing the woman was to the man's desire, because, I remember it was all about the man's desire. It was never about the woman's desire, that the man was always the one who wanted more sex, always. But the more open that the woman was to the man's desire, the more that he would desire her. Mm-hmm. Warped.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy.
Well, so it's not crazy. It is what it is for where you were and at the time and what you were, being fed essentially. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm the same. I can say the same. I was fed some interesting thing. I mean, I was looking at Playboys too. That was the thing. And, that I would have to get from from underneath my father's bed.
Oh gosh.
So that was always interesting as well. And that, between that and sneaking, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but I remember sneaking that Bo Derek movie. It was kind of like the romantic comedy 10. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And the braids and the running on the beach and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, it was just, again, just not a whole lot of conversation, which really, I really appreciate the work that you and I do with our sons, because we have these weekly conversations around sex and intimacy, and with our boys, both of our boys, once a week, to help grow them and grow their maturity around it, so that they're having, because they're in school and they're getting a lot of different opinions from a lot of different kids who are getting it the same way, in more digitally, of course, but getting it in a different modern way, the same way we did when we were kids, and not having conversations with their parents. So I have a deep appreciation, and I think that's magic too, that we're being thoughtful enough to have these more mature, high level conversations with them on a weekly basis, because intimacy and sex go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
I mean, ultimately, if you believe, as we do, that sex can heal and create, you add the intimacy part into it, where there's that deep emotional connection and trust and love. I mean, you can create worlds with that, right?
Yep, absolutely. And we haven't created a world necessarily, but we've certainly created children and businesses and relationships and friendships, and really cultivated all kinds of things from the manifestation and the utilization of that. Well, the utilization of the sexual energy for healing and manifestation. I mean, just, the healing aspects alone, and releasing attachments, and you and I moving through codependency into independency and interdependency, and ultimately, obviously, synergy. And so it's been a really extraordinary practice, daily practice, yearly practice. And yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to do some more episodes on how we broke that down, because we just said a lot to you. So you may want to just kind of like rewind a little bit, and then listen to it again. But yes, and so just to go on the boys for a second, because part of the intimacy conversation around sex that also really evolved with us, which is how we were able to carry it to them, is the intimacy that we had to build within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So what it looked like to be intimate with ourselves. So for me, it was, a lot of it was rescripting the body conversation, like, what does my body look like? What are the parts that I love? What are the parts that I don't love? And guess what? The parts that I didn't love really weren't that attractive. And so it was rescripting around, my butt and my thighs and my tummy. And so it's been, again, for me, just this really beautiful process of self-love to go through for myself, whether it was using exercise or it was using affirmation or increasing the water.
Yeah.
I mean, we have this amazing tool that is called the Balance Chart app, or the Balance Game. It's Your Day Balance Game app that we use that charts and holds us accountable to all of our personal habits that we choose to do on a daily basis. And so it was the utilization of the app. We'll put the link in the show notes, but it was that, what are you reading? What was I feeding myself? What was I doing emotionally for myself that really bolstered myself? And yes, that includes pedicures and manicures and facials and haircuts and all of those types of things. It includes, getting some new clothes or some new shoes or whatever your thing is.
Yeah, but it was all about self-care.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about self-care. And, for me, it was, everything you said resonates. And a lot of those tools, all those tools I currently use.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the one thing that really came up for me was, surrendering to the process, because there was, resistance around. I didn't have to really do anything, and keep myself right and, correct or right, or, keep my ego fed, essentially. And at the end of the day, I'm watching the people that I'm hanging with, including you, Nance, that are swirling it up and evolving, some of these constructs, and I'm like, wow, and I see that the only way that those constructs are being evolved is by putting the work into yourself and what you're reading and that kind of thing, and that's where I started to put in those deposits into myself as well. Because I didn't, I don't want to be, I'm finger quoting here, left behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally wanted to continue to be in relationship with you and those around me. And
thank you.
You're welcome. And so the only way I could really figure out how to do it was to evolve my thinking around it, because it obviously wasn't working. I mean, because we're having more breakdowns than breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
And
and we weren't having sex.
Right.
And we were heavy.
Yep.
And we had some really shitty habits. And, we were drinking a lot and eating crap, and that was the whole credit card debt conversation. We just did a podcast about bankruptcy, and like that was around all of that. Like that whole crux of that time was right around, 2009.
Yeah, and all that led into self-worth and what are we worthy of, and kind of evolving out of that as well. Mm-hmm. It's just it's just amazing how linked together it all is. Mm-hmm. How linked together it is. So I mean, again, remembering that sex and intimacy are not the same thing, yet people link them together as the same thing.
They collapse them.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, remembering that they are separate yet meant to work together in unison. Mm-hmm. Yep. For the greatest results. Yeah. Around those deposits into yourself, around your relationships with yourself, others, and your relationship to life too. Because once you develop that intimacy with yourself and become more transparent with yourself, it is way easier to be more transparent with others as well. But when you're not transparent with yourself and where you're at, you tend to hide out. So, and if you're hiding from yourself, I mean, what do we call that?
Denial.
Yes. Hardcore denial, right?
Yeah, it's huge.
And then you end up hiding out from others. And, some people are very, they can be out in public in denial, or they hole up in their houses and be in denial. And I think I know I have experienced both. So,
And you guys know what denial looks like. I mean, it's like that person that goes, "Oh yeah, I'm great, I'm awesome, doing great. Yeah, business is great. Woohoo, kids are great. Woo!"
smiley face, smiley face.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, you know.
And that's one of their agents. It's an act.
Yeah.
It's an act.
Agent, no pun intended.
Ha ha. So so for when you are in relationship with others, and a lot of this podcast is based on the fact that there are working couples, listening and trying to figure out how to do it together. How you do it at home is how you do it at work.
Yes, it all starts at home. It all starts at that personal level, and then that literally flows into the business, or it doesn't flow into the business,
right?
Because no stops the flow, or resistance is another word for no. So,
and if you can't evolve out of being stuck, in your relationship with yourself or your partner at the house, how the hell are you going to do it at work?
And with your clients, and yeah, exactly.
With your clients, with your coworkers, with everybody, or how are you negotiating that deal if you can't even, if you're hiding out? How are you going to negotiate the greatest deal on behalf of your client if you're in denial about who you are and what you're doing?
Yep.
There's just no way.
Yep.
There's no way. You're never going to play for that win-win.
Yep.
So, awesome. Do you have, are you thinking anything else coming up for you around this, around the evolution of it, or next steps maybe?
Yeah, I think, next steps. I mean, we're happy to absolutely have and continue the conversation. If you want us to go deeper into anything, then, just let us know and drop us a line or an email to let us know if you want us to go deeper into a particular area of this, because again, this is vast and deep. this topic. As far as a couple goes, the action steps, I would say, are we did a podcast on gratitude, which for sure is the practice of intimacy. And so you can do gratitude with yourself. You could do gratitude about your partner. Of course, you could do gratitude about your life or your business and those things. So there's the gratitude practice. Another practice that we do to practice the vulnerability is to literally have an eye gazing moment. So we'll take we start off with 1 to 2 minutes, and you can work your way up to 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I mean, really, obviously it's limitless. I would start with 1 to 3 minutes where you are both sitting. You could sit in Indian style, facing each other and then gaze into each other's eyes, or you could sit in lotus position and get closer and really more connected and more grounded with your root chakra, and then gaze into each other's eyes for 1 to 3 minutes, where you're literally saying nothing and you're gazing into each other's eyes. I mean, you would be amazed at what happens as a result of that. The emotions that come up, the nervousness, the giggles, the deflections, the tears. I mean, you may create so much Kundalini energy between you, so much sexual energy between you. You may end up making love. I mean, what a beautiful result from that.
Right.
So lots of things. So that's something for sure to create intimacy within yourself. You can write a love letter
to yourself or others.
Yeah. Those are beautiful things.
Yeah.
So,
and just, the gratitude or the affirmations, again, affirmations for yourself. Never underestimate the power of words and how you talk to yourself. That voice in your head can be brutal. So verbalizing something nice for yourself that you can start to internalize as you repeat and you go through it is an amazing thing for your own personal intimacy. So I definitely recommend that.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, there's the app where we can walk you through the Your Day Balance Game app. That's on Android right now. We're working on the iTunes. Or the
iOS.
AOS. Thank you, iOS.
iOS.
Sorry, I'm totally an Android person.
Cool. Awesome.
And then, those things that you choose to do in business can certainly flow, that you choose to do in personal can certainly flow into business. Are you going to eye gaze with your client? Probably not. However, you can send them a note of gratitude. You could do a phone call of gratitude, a text of gratitude. You could certainly do anything like that, or have a really intimate conversation, not about real estate, but about, their kids or their work or their parents, or, just have that intimate and empowering conversation with them about what it is that's going on in their life. It's definitely important. So,
yeah. And we'll wrap up, but on that note though, I want to give a pro tip.
okay.
I'm sure that, if you're having a productive business, that you're prospecting, and you may be getting on the phone to do that prospecting. And one of the greatest ways, a lot of us have resistance around getting on the phone. I've noticed as a pattern of agents that's not wanting and usually a lot of times it's just like getting on the phone to break that pattern. You need to break that pattern of whatever the anxiety it is that you have getting on. And the greatest way to do that is to pick up your very first phone call, is to call somebody you love and give them some gratitude, and let them know what your intention is for, the next phone call after that. And then it's just like, instead of taking 3 or 4 or 5 phone calls or feeling like forced to get on the phone, you're totally in the flow. It's so beautiful.
Yep.
I do it every time.
Yep. Absolutely. I love it. Awesome. Well, I love you. I love this subject, and it's definitely been an evolution for us. And I just really appreciate continuing the conversation and leveling up our conversation.
Yes.
Because, you and I still move through it too. And we're always looking to expand and evolve our conversation around intimacy and sex. I love having sex with you.
Thank you. That works out.
So
yeah, it's
beautiful.
a two-way street.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I love you too, and I appreciate having the conversation. And I look forward to evolving this subject more in future podcasts as well.
Yeah.
I think we could do a whole podcast on intimacy, or do a whole podcast on sex. I see it coming for sure.
Absolutely, for sure. Lots of stuff.
I guess it's in the title, so it works out. All right. Well, everybody, have an amazing day.
Yes.
Go be the creator of your day. And
remember,
it's a great life.
It's a great life. Bye for now. Wow, what a show. Thank you so much for listening. If you're inspired, we ask that you share the podcast with one person and subscribe and follow our show. I'm Nancy Jameson.
And I'm Bill Jameson.
And remember, it's a great life.
Woo!